The ancient palace doors creaked open and the air instantly turned still. In the dust-laden hall, a black saber stood embedded in the cracked stone floor. No one touched it. No one chanted a spell. Yet the blade trembled faintly as if it were breathing. The moment Tak Ken Vun took another step forward, the space before him was suddenly torn in two. A saber strike slashed downward so fast that even the martial emperor's eyes couldn't track it. He was sent flying, his body crashing into the palace wall, as ancient stone shattered like rotted wood. Hua Minung stood frozen in shock. That isn't a dead object. The saber slowly lifted itself from the ground. There was no hand gripping it, no wielder controlling it, yet killing intent surged outward like a rising tide. Within the blade, a faint silhouette flickered as if the lingering memory of a fallen supreme expert refused to fade. Lam Huyen stared at the saber hovering in midair. His heart pounded not out of fear, but because he realized something far more terrifying. The saber was staring back at him. After that earth-shattering impact, the grand hall sank into a suffocating silence. Ta Ken Vun struggled to his feet, amid the rubble, blood trailing from the corner of his mouth. As a martial emperor, he had never imagined a day when a single weapon could send him flying with one strike. Yet the thing hovering in midair was clearly no longer a weapon in the ordinary sense. Hua Minung tightened her grip on her long whip, flames flaring around her in wary vigilance. It has sentience. Lam Huyen didn't respond. His gaze followed every subtle fluctuation of the blade. He realized something: the saber wasn't attacking recklessly. It was guarding something behind it. When part of the stone wall collapsed from the aftershock, a hidden opening was revealed. Beyond the grand hall lay a vast garden petrified by the passage of countless years. At its center stood a barren stone mountain radiating a strange pulse of spiritual energy, and the saber was protecting that place. The problem before them was clear. Stay, and they would have to face a ninth-grade mystic artifact that had gained life. Retreat, and they would forfeit a secret that could change the course of their destiny. A faint smile curved Lam Huyen's lips. He already knew. He would not turn back. If you want to see what they choose next, comment 1. Lam Huyen was the first to step beyond the boundary of fear. Ignoring the wary looks from Ta Ken Vun and Hua Minung, he walked toward the petrified garden behind the grand hall. The closer he drew to the stone mountain at its center, the clearer the fluctuations of spiritual energy became, not violent but strangely pure, like the breath of a sleeping life form. Have you lost your mind? Hua Minung hissed. That thing is still above us. And it was. The blood burial saber hovered in the air, its tip subtly turning, with each of Lam Huyen's steps, like a predator tracking its prey. But he did not stop. He had already understood. The saber was not a hunter. It was a guardian. When a loose fragment of stone rolled to the base of the mountain, the ground suddenly cracked open. From the fissure, a stream of crystal-clear water flowed out, carrying such dense life essence that the withered plants nearby began sprouting a thin layer of green moss. Ta Ken Vun went rigid. Origin life water. No one spoke further, but all three understood. From this moment on, they were no longer merely facing a saber. They had stepped into a battle over destiny itself. The moment the origin life water was revealed, the blood burial saber changed. It no longer hovered in silent vigilance. The blade suddenly trembled violently, releasing a metallic wail that shrieked through the air. Killing intent erupted outward. Above the garden, a massive phantom began to take shape, an ancient supreme expert gripping the saber's hilt, his icy gaze cast down upon the world below. The former master, Ta Ken Vun, rasped. A single slash fell. The space above the garden seemed to split apart. Saber intent surged like a tidal wave, the pressure so immense that the ground fractured and the spring water exploded into mist. Hua Minung was forced back half a step, something that had never happened to a martial emperor like her. But the instant the blade struck the stone, mountain events spiraled beyond expectation. The mountain shattered completely. Origin life water burst forth in a violent surge, flooding the garden. Petrified flowers and plants began visibly reviving. The air filled with vibrant life force, and the blood burial saber suddenly fell silent. The blade quivered faintly, then slowly lowered itself as if immersing in the flowing water. Its power did not weaken. It was growing stronger. Lam Huyen clenched his fists. The truth was now clear. The saber was not merely guarding the spring. It was living off it. Origin life water spread throughout the garden, and the blood burial saber seemed reborn. Submerged within the flowing stream, rings of black and crimson spiritual light revolved around the blade. The phantom of the ancient expert above grew clearer, its oppressive aura warping the very air. The pressure was no longer a threat. It was a warning. Ta Ken Vun's expression darkened. It's absorbing life force. If this continued, the saber would grow beyond their ability to resist. But retreating now would mean surrendering all of the origin life water to someone else. Hua Minung shot Lam Huyen a sidelong glance, her gaze turning cold. You knew from the beginning, didn't you? Lam Huyen did not deny it. He simply watched the water simmer faintly around the blade. In that moment, the fragile balance among the three of them finally cracked. Ta Kenven clenched his fists, spiritual energy circulating silently within him. If he killed Lam Huan now, every secret would belong to him alone. At least that was the most rational calculation. Ahead of them stood a demonic saber growing ever stronger. Behind them stood allies on the verge of betrayal. The garden was reviving, yet the air between the three had turned ice cold. Lam Huyan understood clearly. Their enemy was no longer just the blood burial saber. It was the greed awakening within the human heart. Everything collapsed within a single breath. The blood burial saber rose from the spring. This time it was no longer merely absorbing life force, it had fully fused with the origin life water. The phantom of the ancient expert behind the blade opened its eyes. Saber intent poured down like heavenly judgment, sealing off the entire garden. Space froze. Hoa Mi Nung was forced to one knee under the crushing pressure. Ta Can Van gritted his teeth to resist, but blood spilled from the corner of his mouth. A slash descended, not toward the two martial emperors, but straight at Lam Huan. He was the first to touch the secret. He was the variable the saber had sensed. In that instant, Ta Can Van hesitated, save him or not. In that single flicker of doubt, he chose to retreat. Hoa Mi Nung did the same. Under the pressure of life and death, survival instinct overpowered everything. The two figures transformed into streaks of light, withdrawing beyond the reach of the saber's domain. Lam Huyan was left behind. Above him, the descending blade seemed ready to tear the sky apart. There was no retreat. No allies. Death on all sides. For the first time since stepping into the ancient palace, he stood alone before a power capable of crushing every calculation he had made. Just as the descending blade seemed ready to tear Lam Huan apart, he smiled. He did not dodge. He did not retreat. He simply raised a hand. An ancient steely gray-blue in color emerged from the void. In an instant, it expanded to cover half the sky. The saber intent crashed down upon it, erupting in a deep, thunderous boom like a storm echoing from the primordial ages. The skyvolt's steel. At the same time, a dark, golden ancient bell appeared behind him. Its chime resonated outward waves of sound, piercing straight into the spiritual consciousness of the blood burial saber. The phantom of the ancient expert in the air faltered for a single beat. But it didn't end there. 3 icy blue swords shot forth, circling the demonic blade, and forming a sword array that sealed the entire space around the spring. Layer upon layer of suppression descended in perfect sequence. The blood burial saber trembled violently, struggling to break free, but it was already too late. In the distance, Ta Can Van and Hoa Mi Nung stood frozen in shock. They had just realized something astonishing. From the very beginning, Lam Huan had never been cornered. He had been waiting for the saber to complete its evolution, waiting for it to reach its peak, before making his move to suppress it. The one who seemed abandoned in certain death was the true master of the board all along. The sword array sealed shut. The skyvault stele pressed down from above. The ancient bell's toll rang out like a final verdict. The blood burial saber howled. The phantom of its former master twisted violently behind it, yet layer upon layer of suppression tightened without mercy. At last, a deep explosion resounded. The demonic blade was forced down into the heart of the origin life water, sealed within the core of the formation. The garden fell silent. Life force still surged richly through the air, but the killing intent had vanished. Lam Huan lowered his hand and stepped calmly into the stream. The water touched his skin, warm as if it possessed a soul. He did not rush to claim it all. Instead, he closed his eyes and sent a strand of divine sense deep beneath the surface, searching for the true essence core hidden below. In the distance, Ta Can Van and Hoa Mi Nung did not dare approach. They understood clearly from this moment on, the balance had shifted. The one holding the initiative was no longer a martial emperor, but the young man standing within the waters of life. Yet when Lam Huyan's divine sense reached the deepest layer of the spring, an ancient fluctuation suddenly stirred awake. It seemed, the thing sealed here was not just a single saber. If you want to know what else lies hidden beneath the spring, comment 1.